Thanks for tuning into A Better World. I'm your host, Luis Acevedo, and don't forget to subscribe to the blog at loseview.blogspot.com. Today I want to talk about the closure of churches that we're seeing across the nation. And yeah, this is sort of old news. Everybody's sort of aware of this, especially what you saw took place over Easter weekend with people getting ticketed and just having churches having drive-in services, and things are just becoming very weird as far as that aspect of our life goes, the spiritual aspect of our lives. And, you know, I definitely see people becoming worried during these trying times because churches are shutting down, and so they are concerned with how much the government is going to restrict services and then maybe start to enforce certain teachings that go against our beliefs. And I understand those concerns, but I think it's important that we understand a little bit of history here, because if we just look back at the Christianity of antiquity, we see the churches were at homes. People would gather and have services and worship within their home with a tight knit community. And that was done to evade persecution from the Romans. And that is how basically Christianity started. And even after the Edict of 313, you still had gatherings where people would go to their homes. And so this is something that's been going on for much longer than we think of. And I know that there's this pastor who has started a movement called the We Are Church, I believe, and he's revitalizing that aspect of Christianity that has been lost. And a lot of churches and other pastors are sort of condemning that practice, in my opinion, because they're concerned about their salaries, they're concerned about their building, their status in the community, etc. When we, as Christians, as people of faith, should realize that a church isn't a necessity. Even if you go back to when the cathedrals were first being built and large church buildings were being implemented in our culture and our society, there were people, and the majority of people, who would only attend Mass once a year. But that doesn't mean they weren't worshiping the Lord every other day throughout the year, all 364 days. Besides that one, they would go to church and in worship with a large group. So I think it's important for us to realize that Christianity and worship is so much more than an actual physical church building. And a way that we can take that back is by worshiping within our homes and getting Bible studies together and start worshiping together in our homes, and even start having services, if you will, within the home. I think that would be more beneficial, and it would entice more people to Christianity, because then they would realize it isn't something that's institutionalized. And I think in today's world, especially in my generation and millennials, we have this negative vibe. We get this negative vibe from institutions just because of the catastrophe they're causing around us right now. And so if we could just deinstitutionalize the churches, I think it would be much better for Christianity and humanity as a whole. Because yes, there is a hierarchy. Of course, there needs to be leadership there, and in those little church homes, there will be people who rise up, become elders, become leaders, but then they branch off and then start doing their own thing and evangelizing throughout their neighborhood, their community, as opposed to becoming stagnant and just basically eventually becoming a moribund church where it dies off, and you just have old people in it, and then after the old people pass away, there's nobody else attending that church. You see that so frequently through churches. I know my wife and I have experienced that as we've been trying to find a church home for about a year now, and every church we go to, it's like older people, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's that old mentality that goes along with it. It's this psychological effect that our generation, my generation, is no longer conditioned to. We don't like it because everything is becoming decentralized. And so we can start doing these things at home, and we don't need a church to practice and worship our faith. You know, I mean, this is even biblical. I mean, you just look in the book of Acts. That's how they first congregated, you know. And when Moses took the people from Egypt, they were going through the desert. There was no church home. There wasn't any of that. There was just a group of people representing the body of God, the body of Christ. And, you know, another thing that we should realize too, that I try to emphasize, is we're in a spiritual warfare. And the best way to combat a large centralized force is through like guerrilla warfare tactics, if you will. I mean, you just look at the Vietnam War. That was a perfect example of how guerrilla warfare completely disorients larger armies. They don't know how to fight against it. They can't combat it. And then I think you go back to the Peninsular War, like that's back in the 1400s, I believe, where the term guerrilla warfare was coined by the Duke of Wellington or something, I think. And so this is something that goes way back to like the 1400s, and it's proven to be efficient. You just look at the wars in Afghanistan. When Russia was attacking in the Middle East, the Afghanis fought back using guerrilla tactics. Decentralized forces just spread across the country, attacking larger forces that were slow and less nimble and agile. And so if we apply that same principle to the church, decentralize it, have it in our homes, it'll be more difficult for people to stop, the government to stop. You look at China, they have underground churches right now, and they have home churches right now. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and I think that we're eventually going to get there. So I just wanted to share that thought with you guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you later. Peace.